What's in the box? What is in the box? This company's been pretty good for me. Good for performance as far as getting the stuff I need fast. And then what we get is awesome. Hopefully they sponsor me one day, but what did we get? New shocks. All right, yeah. I figured this is it. They came in finally. Pretty good looking shocks. Let's see here. Gonna be for the Sonoma. Nice, simple, black. KYB is a local company here in Indiana, so I like to buy stuff that I know is made around here. So gonna go on the 93 Sonoma SLE we've been working on, so look forward to more on that. So here we are, got the truck in the air. Just gonna do the backs first. This is wheel chalked because it's a rear wheel drive, rear parking brake, so it don't roll forward. Got it jacked up, got jack stands in there. One thing I always like to do is squirt some good old PB blaster, and I put that on the end of the old shock bolt and the two upper bolts. There, you can see them. Last guy had a really nice exhaust put on this, so I really like that. It's duals coming out from the muffler. So we'll get those old shocks off. All right, so we got those two off. There's one dead shock over there. Obviously, bottom post. A couple small bolts on the top. A couple wrenches, you know, stuff like that. Thought I'd show you this. This is kind of funny. This is what an old dead shock looks like. It literally takes no effort to squish down, and it stays there. But the new ones, these guys, they're going to push back. So get the top bolts in. Actually, I think you put the bottom in first and then you line up the top bolts. So we'll get that in. Alright, so getting the old ones off is definitely the hard part. Got the new screws started in there. One of the little tricks I do, keep the shock from getting all greasy as I stretch it in here, I just put some plastic wrap on it. You want to leave this strap on until you get it into place. Now, once I tighten all this up, then I can get all this stuff off of here and it'll be a pretty shock mounted. And there you have it. One XLG shock installed in the rear, so that turned out pretty good. Alright, we got number 2 on. It went a little bit easier. Putting them on is always easier than taking them off. Just always easier to put the bolts back on. But yeah, rear shocks, some basic stuff I think you guys should just, you know, pay attention to. It's just a pair of shocks, but they are super important. 50-60 bucks makes all the difference in the world. Alright guys, here we are doing the front now. Got this all jacked up, jack stands. A little dirty in here, but went ahead and made this holder wrench with two together. A little bit of duct tape to give some extensions and leverage on there. Device grip the top. Two bottom bolts are right there. Those usually come out pretty easy, but this top one's the bare little PB blaster on there, and mine's actually spinning pretty good, so I should have this out, the new one in momentarily, and I'll show you how that goes. Alright, well, that came out pretty easy actually, easier than it should have. You probably won't have that kind of luck. You gotta cut this off usually, but I actually got the screw out, or the bolt off the top. This is 15mm, works really well. That's what they suggested, but this is 9/16 really, as you can see, it fits in there. Bottom screws are a 13mm, that fits exactly. New shock comes with new hardware. Tried to clamp onto here, but that's not going to work. You got to clamp on the top where it's squared out. And again, if you can't get it off, they suggest a Sawzall. I've used, you know, cutting wheel, stuff like that, but it is really hard to get in there. I went ahead and took off that little dust cover thing there because it was kind of coming off anyway, but that way you can see everything. I'm going to put new calipers, rotors, and pads on here eventually. These pads are doing okay, but last owner didn't replace the rotors, so they're scored. I'm gonna have to do new bearings and all that, but that'll be for a different day. Getting these shocks on is the priority. Figure I'd do this fun little test just to show you the old shock. You shove it in there, it recovers. The new one, I mean, the old one, shove it in there, nothing. That's what a 30-year-old shock does. So definitely replace your shocks if they're more than whatever 10 or 15 years old. Okay, got that in there. Aftermarkets come with a second bolt for you to put basically a lock nut on there. Second nut, not a bolt. 2 nuts there. We got her in there, no big deal. Bottom bolts back in, 13 millimeter. New shock in there, and luckily the top, 7/16, 15 millimeter, whatever you want to call it, turned out good. I'm going to do a little cleaning in here and get on the other side. So the second side, not near as easy. Yeah, I could have stuck a Sawzall in here, but instead I just drilled a hole and drilled a bigger hole and a slightly bigger hole, and that'll get it spinning. Sometimes you can knock the nut off, but I can't seem to get it off there, so I got it to at least spin by cutting that hole in it, and then the top will come off. And obviously I'll get to the bottom, and next time you'll see the new shock. I thought this was a pretty good top view. You can see what's going on in there. Holding on to the top of the shock, turning that bolt. Over here, new shock's in there. A little bit of better airflow without those pads in there, and obviously they're meant to keep dirt out of here, and I'm not going to be driving it in the snow with the salt too much, so no big deal, but get that new shock on. So here we are, we got shock number 2 done. Do the fun test here. Down, dead. New one's already in there. I went ahead and put it in there. So I did have a little trouble getting the top nut off of this one here. So instead of using a Sawzall and chopping that off like they do, I used a drill bit, drilled a hole, a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger. Took a few tools, I had to chisel, but then you can just use a wrench, the bigger 15, and it'll turn, and it does come right off. So got the new one in there, got the bottom bolts in there nice and snug. So yeah, that's all there is to it. Front and rear shocks, good to go. Time for test drive. Test drive went very well, of course. Obviously it drives a lot better. New shocks make all the difference in the world. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. 4 shocks on a 93 GMC Sonoma.